Maybe Kanye never would have said he wants to kill Jewish people if it wasn't for his disorder. That's a distinct possibility. But it seems pretty clear that he would have had to have these beliefs in the first place in order to spew them.
That's a big
Metzger isn't the only medical expert saying this.
I'm glad someone just laid that out very plainly, because that was part of the discourse that's always bugged me. Because like, yeah, there's some things when I saw like when Ye was doing the entire presidential run and was giving that speech, and then in the middle of that speech, you know, he was saying the weirdest things and then crying and then laughing, and then like I was just like, I didn't really cover it or talk about it because I don't like being an armchair athlete, but I also don't like just like sitting there and being like, oh, it looks like he's doing something because of his mental condition, right? But like the anti-Semitism or the racism or the views on slavery and black people that it was a choice, all that kind of stuff, like it's not bipolar disorder making that racism. All right, Kanye, what's going on? Yay.
The thing about it, me and Adidas, is like, I could literally say anti-Semitic shit and they can't drop me. I could say anti-Semitic things and Adidas can't drop me. Now what?
You know what? I'm going to be honest. Calling out Ye and, you know, any other very prominent billionaire, super rich, famous individual for their kind of like gross anti-Semitism or other forms of racism, you know, is completely fine and or good. I just feel that there's sometimes a double standard, because I was posting about racist ass Mel Gibson on Twitter, and a lot of people were like, that's not comparable. Okay, he's apologized. He served his time. And I was like, well, he apologized for the first one, the first of many. He has had many anti-Semitic tirades, including even some kind of like, you could say, Holocaust denial exaggeration light in a few of them, and saying, woof, yeah, really, really bad things. And he's been doing that for a long time. Now, he did, I guess, if you want to say his penance, because this has been going on for such a long time because he's so racist, he did kind of disappear for a little while, took a break, was like, I'm just going to let things cool down. But, you know, that was also after it got revealed that he had a recording, and in that recording, he goes on a rant where he basically says to, I believe it was his wife at the time, you know, dressed like, I'm paraphrasing, but dressed like that, I hope you get raped by a pack of N-words. And that's some pretty extreme racism right there with the hard R and all that, Mr. Mel Gibson. So yeah, and then comes back and wins an Academy Award. Doesn't lose everything. Like, whereas with Ye, it's like, everything gone. Every brand is like, oh, we can't associate with this. but racist ass Mel Gibson is fucking appearing on late night shows, making jokes and award ceremonies, and he's just standing there and smiling. And yeah, Ricky Gervais will maybe roast him a little bit. Will certainly make reference to it. You know, be like, hey, sugar tits, why sugar tits? You know, that's definitely a little poke that he gets, but he still just gets a friendly poke. It's not like you must lose. We will not associate with you. You are not brand safe in any way, shape, or form.
Shortly after these comments, it was announced that Adidas decided to finally end its partnership with Ye, formerly known as Kanye West. Their relationship was under review for weeks at this point, as Adidas wanted to look like they were taking action against his recent anti-Semitic comments without, you know, taking any real action. The fact of the matter is that Ye really did have a tight grip on the company, seeing as he owns the trademark for his sneaker brand Yeezy, which was worth as much as $3 billion. Kanye wasn't entirely speaking out of arrogance when he said that Adidas wouldn't drop him. He knew it would be a big loss for the company. But despite the loyal fans, massive profits, and sellout shoes that Yeezy brought to the table, Adidas did walk away. A large business with, you know, past accusations of forced and child labor walked away from $250 million in profit. That's practically unheard of, and it's how you know that Kanye did something irredeemable.
Thanks,
According to Forbes, this absolutely obliterated Kanye's worth, making him no longer a billionaire. They officially removed him from the billionaires list on October 25th, 2022. In fact, Kanye's most recent comments have been the final straw for corporate America as a whole. Adidas, The Gap, Instagram, Twitter, Balenciaga, and the Creative Artist Agency have all distanced themselves from Kanye in recent weeks. So,
which, again, if this is a standard of which the things he has both said and done are just beyond the pale, that standard should be applied broadly speaking, because I'm not even here. I'm never going to defend fucking Ye's takes. They're anti-Semitic as fuck. I like, goddamn, you know, someone close to you is doing a poor job of telling you to not either stop doing that and to start apologizing, start doing whatever mea culpa you need to do to get back into the good graces of, like, you know, the rest of the Hollywood crew, you know, the billionaires and all that kind of stuff. But again, broadly speaking, the fact that we got Mel Gibson who's still winning Academy Awards when, you know, toe to toe, they are fucking, you know, saying extremely anti-Semitic and racist stuff as well.
What did he do this time? Well, it's a sort of combination of a few different things, but let's focus on the month of October. Early in the month, news circulated that one of Ye's catwalk events at Paris Fashion Week included a White Lives Matter t-shirt. Now, the phrase White Lives Matter, as I'm sure many of you already know, is a direct racist response against the Black Lives Matter movement. It's a hate slogan, and even if you want to claim that Kanye didn't mean it in that way, which I believe he absolutely did, he could have put plenty of other things on a shirt, but he chose that. Not that this should really be a surprise coming from someone wearing and selling the Confederate flag, but I guess that was all okay with these brands back in 2013 because Kanye claimed he was reappropriating it. Again, I personally...
That's how I kind of saw some of the stuff at first. That was my read. I was like, I think, like, you know, because like back in the time, you know, post-college dropout, maybe, I was fully on board with the idea that Kanye West is like one of, like, I mean, he still kind of is one of the greatest producers in history. Producers, not MCs. I think MCs, he's not exactly as talented at that, but producers, like, fucking toe to toe, one of the greatest producers in history, in the history of music. So I was like, it just seems weird to me that someone who's like so deeply entrenched in this aspect of the creative process would harbor really, you know, fucked up beliefs. So if you see the Confederate flag and then you see him making statements that he's trying to reappropriate, I was like, okay, that kind of makes sense, you know?
I find that pretty hard to believe when he's also said that 400 years of slavery was just a choice, but I'm getting a bit ahead of myself. Now, choosing to design, create, print, showcase, and then, I think, sell White Lives Matter t-shirts, now that was a choice, and one that plenty of people were disgusted by. Weeks after debuting the line at Paris Fashion Week, Kanye's team donated these shirts to homeless people on Skid Row.
And I mean, for me, it was just sad. I hate this new arc of Candace Owens taking, you know, celebrities and then completely like distorting, like, MIA, what is going on there? Fucking you were doing songs about ethnic cleansing and the Tamil Tigers, and now you're palling around with Candace Owens? Why? That's the person who talked about Hitler. You remember that quote where she's like, his problem was that he wasn't a nationalist. If he just hadn't tried to expand and gone outward, it would have been fine, you know? And you're just like, wait, no, he was really, really bad to the Jews even before he started trying to expand, even before the Lebensraum. The things were not good for a variety of groups. It doesn't, like, that's ahistorical nonsense.
Los Angeles, effectively taking advantage of their lack of clothing options and using his so-called generosity as a PR stunt. Maybe he wanted to appear noble, but LA advocates called him nothing more than a faux morality-based grifter. Kanye came to the most economically deprived and abandoned corner of LA to dump his trash and tell a community of unhoused and marginally housed, as well as heavily policed black people, that White Lives Matter, activist Pete White said on LA Can's Instagram.
That is pretty fucked.
Yet this still wasn't enough.
It sucks because it's like both him and Candace Owens, both of them are just doing so much heavy lifting and work for white supremacy. That's like the saddest thing about all of this.
Didn't just have to be tone deaf and insulting, he apparently needed to be threatening and dangerous too. The same month, Kanye tweeted that he would go DEFCON 3 on Jewish people, a reference to the US military defense readiness system called DEFCON. Terrifyingly, but not surprisingly enough, there were those that agreed with his message and started spreading it. One hate group held a banner over the 405 that read, "Kanye is right about the Jews," while lifting their arms in a Nazi salute.
I mean,
Kanye may not...
Of all the groups who might be like, oh, whoa, didn't know you were so based, I'm guessing it's probably neo-Nazis, white supremacists, and yeah, that ilk.
have actually stood by them or made that banner, but he might as well
Tucker
have.
Carlson tonight.
Even
surprise,
just
surprise.
while working on this script, news broke that the Holocaust Museum of LA was flooded with anti-Semitic messages ever since Kanye told them he didn't want a private tour. The CEO of the museum, Beth Keane, offered said tour in the hopes to educate Kanye and change his perspective a bit. They weren't even condemning him. Yet, according to Ye, Planned Parenthood is his Holocaust museum. What's so dangerous about this isn't just the misinformation and harmful comments, but the number of people willing to act and spread hate on Kanye's behalf. On Twitter alone, Kanye has over 30 million followers when he made these remarks. 30 million, which, as Keane points out, is more than twice the amount of Jewish people on the entirety of this planet. His words absolutely have an impact on people, and even if he's banned from that platform, he continues to spread hate wherever he can. In just a month, Kanye really showed his true colors. But hasn't he done this before? In October 2022, we got this headline, but we also saw it in March.
My God, does any black person making over $1 million have any encounter with the racist police system? Oh yeah, that's a huge thing. That's why like you can't do like no like you know only be like a class exclusive activist where it's just like, oh, you know, if we could just enact socialism and we can have way more equity and then we have way less exploitation of people, then everything will just be fine. Like we will end racism. It's because yeah, rich people they still, if they happen to be black, get disproportionately stopped by the police, pulled over by the police. Doesn't matter if you're driving a super nice car. Like there's so many stories of like NFL players who get stopped by the cops, musicians, actors who get stopped by the cops. Yeah, it's in 99 Problems. Yes, thank you. Awesome song, by the way.
2022, after he made a music video depicting himself kidnapping Pete Davidson, then burying him alive. So when exactly did Kanye show his true colors, and has he always been this way?
I'm really happy for you. I'm gonna let you finish.
Elon is banning people who impersonate him. Fucking snowflake. There's nothing better than waking up and enjoying a fresh steaming cup of my own urine. Such a tangy way to start the day. And it's scientifically proven to help brain cells grow. This sounds a lot more like Dr. Oz. If you want to be like me, drink your pee. Oh no. But what about the free speech? Come on. What about the free what about the free speech? No, don't do that.
But Beyonce had one of the best videos of all time.
Hello and welcome to the Corporate Casket. I'm the Illuminati, and today we're going to be talking about Kanye. Now, this has been requested, though obviously in the past month with just the incredible amount of bullshit that's occurred now, it has obviously increased. And while I know I can't possibly cover everything he's done, I do find it quite interesting just how long Kanye's upsetting behavior has gone under the radar or outright ignored. It's not as if people weren't calling him out before now, but it just feels like Kanye has been given so many undeserved second chances that it's only enabled and emboldened him. Also, please note that I wrote this right after the Adidas announcement, so I'm sure there's more news to come. And as a matter of fact, as a small update, there was also an incident just a couple days ago where he unannounced showed up to the Skechers headquarters and got escorted out.
He's got a lot of second chances. Yeah, I've seen a lot of discourse, especially in black Twitter, about how Kanye was previously giving really racist speeches, and now allegedly, apparently, one of those speeches he was praising Hitler, but where he was talking about how slavery was a choice and all this other shit, and that was on TMZ, and that dude who worked at TMZ fucking roasted him so good. It's such a good clip. But yeah, right after that, it didn't move the pulse nearly as quickly as it did in this instance. This time it was everyone at once was just okay, fine, we're just walking away, just running away from it.
And then his school, Donda Academy, also was closed down or something. And then one of the teachers at said Donda Academy broke their NDA, or I don't know, is whatever, speaking and talking about Kanye's obsession with Hitler and stuff. It's a mess. There is just so much that keeps unfolding, but the point and the pattern is going to be relatively the same throughout most of these controversies we're going to cover. Now, in 2004, his debut album, The College Dropout, was actually called one of the best 10 debut albums of the decade by Rolling Stone. It was a result of years of hard work, burying himself in songwriting and rhymes since he was a teenager. Though, of course, his relationship with Jay-Z sure didn't hurt either. Even though he was controversial from the very beginning, it seemed like it was for the right reasons. He wasn't afraid to speak his mind, stating that George Bush doesn't care about black people after the president's upsetting response to Hurricane Katrina. A couple years later, he was
I remember just rewatching that clip being holy shit. He has the look on Mike Myers' face.
storming the stage and snatching the microphone from the winners at the 2006 MTC Europe Music Awards, claiming that he should have won because his video cost $1 million and had Pamela Anderson in it. 3 years after that, he basically did the same thing, telling Taylor Swift that while he was really happy for her win, Beyoncé had one of the best videos of all time. The whole "I'ma let you finish" meme went viral in a similar way that Will Smith's "Get my wife's name out your mouth," that whole thing. And people seemed willing to laugh it off. Yeah, it was rude, it was crass, it was pushing a boundary. But it just seemed like to be a part of who Kanye was and what his brand was. He later said that he was the one who made Taylor Swift famous, and he felt that they still might have sex. Which, first of all, gross. That is a terrible and just wrong thing to say, especially publicly. But secondly, all of this behavior was just kind of basically forgiven. Ye even threw it in Taylor's face, claiming that Taylor said it was okay if he did these things, and hosted a canceled Taylor Swift party with Kim.
Huh? What, is that the first time you've heard that? I think that was a lyric in his song. It wasn't even a statement given to a magazine. Prop explained it best as he could on It Could Happen Here. The black community often tries to call in our people when they're acting up because we want them to change, and we know change only happens if you support the community. We want to forgive you and give you space and grace. But for many, it's seen as too long of a time, and for the rest, it was like the last straw. Understood.
Kardashian.
I definitely am going to listen to that.
But bit by bit, the comments went from being occasionally rude and outlandish to troubling. In 2011, he compared himself to Hitler, stating, and I quote, "I walk through the hotel and I walk down the street, and people look at me like I'm fucking insane, like I'm Hitler. One day, the light will shine through, and one day, people will understand everything I..."
Well, I mean, I completely understand, just from like an outsider's perspective, that like there is certainly something to be said about the fact that like there is a limited amount of black billionaires, and there's also a limited amount of very famous black people, and they seem to be put under a certain and different set of scrutiny. Now, I'm not saying that there isn't individuals, because black people aren't monoliths like any other group. I'm not saying that there isn't individuals who are monsters. Fucking Bill Cosby, really good example there. But there's also, like, you know, before Chappelle went full turf, he spoke a lot about this, and he kept bringing it up about just the difference in the way black celebrities are treated compared to other different groups, and what that experience has been like firsthand from someone obviously who grew up as, like, you know, a very fast rising comedian. I highly recommend that. That was the first interview he did actually after he quit the Chappelle show.
Ever did. Talk about foreshadowing in the worst way possible. I mean, Hitler is hated for, I think, very justified reasons, you know, mainly because he was an evil dictator that ordered the genocide of millions of people. So maybe, and this is just a crazy little quirky thought here, don't compare people's justified loathing for Hitler to their criticism of you. But I guess Kanye felt that this was an accurate comparison after all, considering the anti-Semitic comments he started spewing a couple of years later when he perpetuated the stereotype that Jewish people control the government. Kanye said he felt that this was actually giving a compliment, that Jewish people have money, and admitted he came off as ignorant. Still, you know you fucked up when even Obama calls you a jackass. Now, here's the thing. Kanye had a damn good publicist at the time who kept him from taking things too far. While some of the things he said crossed a line for many, I still don't think he was really all that hated. His loyal fans were sticking by him, and even if he was problematic, his musical talents were apparently enough to make up for it, at least in the public eye. But in 2018, his image finally took a massive hit when Kanye spoke unbridled in the TMZ newsroom. He started off by saying he loved Donald Trump, that he represented the world, and claimed that 400 years of slavery was a choice. Kanye was called out right then and there by TMZ's Van Lathan, who said, quote,
"While you are making music and being an artist and living the life that you've earned by being a genius, the rest of us in society have to deal with these threats to our lives. We have to deal with the marginalization that has come from the 400 years of slavery that you said for our people was a choice."
And he said it better than I ever could, and frankly was probably more polite than I would have been, and than I'm going to be today. Though Kanye went up to Van,
and apparently according to him as well. And I was also, when I saw that, I was like, damn, that's like the coolest I've ever seen a TMZ anything be. By the way, TMZ is usually like gutter trash reporters and reporting, but that was fucking amazing. He then later went on to say that apparently Ye was like praising Hitler, but that didn't air in the TMZ segment.
And said that he was sorry he hurt him. He didn't seem to take any responsibility. Sure, he heard Van, but he didn't listen. Van later explained that by getting close to Trump and other racist people in power, Kanye was disappointing him and seemingly validating their messages. It's why wearing MAGA hats and saying Trump's my boy, as Kanye did, was so offensive. But Kanye said that he had to get close to Trump to make a change, to better advocate for the Black community. Personally, I fail to see how condoning Trump and calling him my boy would do that, but that's apparently the official story. But this was the last straw for many Kanye fans. Maybe he made comments out of ignorance before, but this one was just a whole new level. The article, What It's Really Like to Be a Kanye Fan Right Now by Adriana Davis, detailed how disappointed and numb so many people were to hear these things, especially his fans that, as Van Lathan said, really do deal with marginalization. Davis said that ever since she was 16, Ye had been the voice that pushed her to dream bigger, go harder, reach higher, and that he, quote, literally served as the soundtrack to my adult life. The relationship she had with Kanye's music was emotional and almost spiritual in a way. She was ultimately left with a dilemma. Can you separate the art from the artist? Personally, and in certain circumstances, I think you can. If you grew up with Kanye's music, Harry Potter books, The Cosby Show, it doesn't mean that those positive messages and experiences you had as a child or just a younger person are non-existent anymore and that you can't enjoy those memories. But it is important for a fan to make the distinction, to support good messages and not the hateful artist, though that's just my opinion anyway. Kanye started to try and make this separation, referring to Ye as the old Kanye and then the new Kanye. But honestly, looking back, it's really all the same person. Even those close to Kanye have said it, with rap duo Little Brother stating, "He is the same dude. Big personality, crazy ideas, off the wall. He was that guy back then. He's got a lot more money and a bigger platform, but was the same. Nothing Kanye does surprises me. It's just not old Kanye, new Kanye. Nah. If you had them early interactions with him, you saw traces of all of that." Now, these traces became more prominent as time went on, and as Kanye and Kim Kardashian divorced, they seemingly grew to be uncontrollable.
I go and get the lawyer, change the lawyer so we can finally do the divorce, and then somehow I'm the one that's the stalker.
A bad cycle now.
Things between Kim and Ye had been tense, with Kanye even admitting that he thought Kim was going to leave him after the TMZ incident. They stuck together, but in 2020, during his short-lived run for president, Kim spoke out about her husband's mental health. It seemed pretty clear that regardless of what you thought of him, he wasn't okay. At rallies, he said he didn't give a fuck if he won, he just wanted to be of service to God. He didn't observe social distancing, he missed deadlines to file fundraising forms with the FEC, and platformed on ignorant values. He said that abolitionist Harriet Tubman didn't actually free slaves, she just, quote, had them work for other white people. At one point, he even told the crowd about how Kim had contemplated aborting their first child, which is just way too much personal information to divulge without Kim's explicit consent. Despite his harmful and destructive statements, it seemed like Kim was doing all the things she could and being as patient as possible. Granted, we've got no idea what happens behind closed doors, so feel free to take this with the smallest grain of salt. Social media-wise, Kim explained how difficult bipolar disorder can be, while Kanye apologized and asked for forgiveness. Ultimately, things did not work out. Kim started dating Pete Davidson, Kanye had a brief relationship with Julia Fox, and continually begged for Kim to come back. And in terms of celebrity relationships, if this had been the extent of it, stopping here, I wouldn't bother writing this into the episode, as I don't really and typically believe that celebrity breakup stuff is really my business. However, this goes beyond the typical relationship dramatics, as Kanye started a public tirade against Davidson. In his music videos, he had a claymation version of himself kidnap and kill a claymation Davidson. A downright creepy red animated monkey beat up Pete Davidson in an animated version of the same song during the lyrics, "God saved me from that crash just so I can beat Pete Davidson's ass." And look, Kanye can say that his art isn't a proxy for ill or harm all he wants, but when you have a fan base as loyal as his, it's pretty disturbing to do something like this. And that's regardless of Davidson sending Kanye a selfie of him in Kim's bed, regardless of the tabloids saying that Kanye was spreading a rumor about Davidson having AIDS. Kanye took things to scary heights that were very unnecessary. He brought personal business into the public eye and even urged his followers to scream at Davidson if they saw him in real life. And Kanye just wasn't going to stop. He claimed Kim put a hit on him, that she was keeping him from seeing their kids, that Kim was failing to protect their daughter North by allowing her on TikTok, and that Davidson was going to get Kim hooked on drugs because he had once been in rehab. The level of harassment was just insane. And again, I think this goes past Hollywood drama. Trevor Noah summed it up pretty well on his program when he stated,
"What we're seeing, though, is one of the most powerful, one of the richest women in the world unable to get her ex to stop texting her, to stop chasing after her, to stop harassing her. Just think about that for a moment. Think about how powerful Kim Kardashian is, and she can't get that to happen.
No matter what you think of Kim, Pete, Kanye, or even Trevor Noah, he made an important point. This story may have seemed fully tabloid, and maybe people found it hard to feel bad for Kim, considering all the controversial things she's done. I mean, hell, I've criticized her before multiple times. But at the end of the day, she still does not deserve to have her ex-husband harassing her. Plus,
total sidebar, who's replacing Trevor Noah as the new host of, I know he's quitting, right? Like this year?
These levels of harassment can and do become dangerous. Trevor told his own story of his mother facing the same treatment from her ex-husband, how those around her, whether family or police, questioned what she had done to provoke him. It wasn't harassment, they'd say. She was overreacting. But then,
you don't know yet? I was so upset because I used to be like a super hardcore The Daily Show viewer. I was like, I never missed an episode. And then when Jon Stewart retired, obviously I was like heartbroken, but in my heart, I was like, I really hope they give it to Hasan Minhaj, because he's an up and comer and he's really funny, and like I see things for that person. He would make a great new host. Like, transfer it over. John Oliver's leaving to go do his own thing on HBO. I think a handful of other people might branch off to do their own projects, or already started their own projects. And I was like, this could be so fucking awesome if it goes through. And then Trevor Noah came out of nowhere. I was like, who's this person? I was like, I don't know the stand-up comedian, and I'm not familiar with him.
Noah got a call from his brother. His mom had been shot. She did survive a shot to the head as it missed her brain, and her ex was convicted of attempted murder. That doesn't mean that this is what will happen between Kanye and Kim, but it's why
the Patriot
we need to
Act
take
was a
these
really good
stories
show.
seriously. It's why the abuse and the music videos, the vague threats and the constant social media harassment, it's why they're not funny. This isn't a dramatic love story. This feels more like a ticking time bomb. And Kanye seemed to only prove Trevor's concerns right when he lashed out at him, using racial slurs and leading to a suspension from Instagram. His rage seemed to spiral, and come September 2022, he called himself, along with several other Kardashian fathers, namely Tristan Thompson, Travis Scott, and Scott Disick, quote, cum donors, which, what a lead up for that quote.
Whoa.
This tirade was sparked by his inability to have a say in where his children go to school. I mean, while I understand that he would want to be involved in his children's lives, maybe don't threaten people with physical violence. If Kanye actually wanted to be a good father and do right by his own kids, then why would he harass the mother of his children at every turn? Why would he lead by example and show his children how he, the father, is treating his ex-wife, their mother? It's gross that articles about this situation end their reports with, oh, hey, I guess it's a good thing that the Kardashians are so rich so they can hire security guards. Like, sure, that is great and all, but the bigger question here is why the fuck should they have to feel so afraid in the first place? Besides, while I can't say I've ever been in
He's a grown child driven by personal grievance, like Musk. Yeah, it's true. It's funny how like Musk and Kanye kind of both turned out to be these two, like, you know, big divorce dad energy individuals.
Exact situation here, I can't imagine that any amount of security is going to just wipe away those fears. No one should have to be holed up in their house and make their home a prison because their ex-husband is dangerous. Now, when Kim and Pete broke up, Kanye still continued posting disturbing content, like the photoshopped headline, Skeet Davidson dead at 28, with Skeet being the...
And obviously, like, I know the defense, like when this was all going down, a lot of people were like, again, like, well, they're super rich. I think they're going to be fine. I'm not going to feel bad for celebrities. And I was like, oh, you don't have to feel bad for celebrities. I don't engage in that practice. That practice. But it is bad for celebrities to normalize that shit. It's bad for celebrities who have huge fan bases, tons of adoring fans, to put shit out there where it's just like, yeah, I'm going to normalize like violence against women, or I'm going to normalize different forms of racism, you know? That's where the problem comes in.
Name he used for Pete. He's remained bitter, angry, and hateful. And all of this leads up to today. The anti-Semitic comments, Adidas dropping him, and even the most loyal of fans and brands alike being less interested in Kanye than ever. Celebrities have condemned him, social media sites have cut him off, and radio plays have dropped. But he still has the support of notable people, even if it's from the other toxic individuals on social media. Recently, there have been reports that Kanye is planning to buy the alt-right social media platform Parler. The CEO's wife just so happens to be...
Yeah, I know. That's the wild thing about this story is like, how is Candace Owens pulling this off? I don't understand it. And like, It would be such a bad buy. It really would. It's like it's not allowed on all stores. You can't get it on like I don't think you can get it on the Apple Store still. And not to mention, it's like these are not profitable companies. It's just social media in general is not profitable. But what is your ability to get seed money, to get capital, to get venture capital to input into either your company or your stock. So to do that, you need to have a product that people are going to feel safe either associating their brand with in this form of advertising or pumping tons of money into it, unless you're ideologically driven like Peter Thiel. That's why Peter Thiel can be a right-wing billionaire who also makes things that may lose money, but ultimately it's about getting more of his messaging out there, that I want the world to be a monarchy, we need to be led by a dictator, this is what I want to do to push to make this happen. I'm ideologically driven to fund politicians, apps, all that kind of shit. But for something like Parler, it's going to be like, this is like, it's filled with Nazis, it's filled with the alt-right, it's like, it's a very, very unstable, bad build. I've used it as a joke to troll people, and it sucks using Parler. Like, it's just it would be a terrible purchase. You are so much better off starting something from scratch than you are buying Parler.
Candace Owens, who also had been seen with Kanye quite a bit recently. Not only was she at his fashion show wearing one of those White Lives Matter shirts, but she defended his tweets, saying no honest person would find his words anti-Semitic. I guess the entirety of the Anti-Defamation League is just dishonest then, right? Like, hate groups have said that he was right about Jewish people. Literal pro-Nazi groups have rallied around him, and Owens is going to say that his remarks aren't anti-Semitic? If I try to make any sense of that, I'm going to give myself a headache. Now, truthfully, I don't know if it's possible for Kanye to recover from this, and I don't think he fully deserves to. Maybe that's controversial to say. This is really only an overview of the things he's done. I already have an entire separate episode all about his little freaking weird church situation, but there's one more final thing that I need to say.
Yeah,
I
forgot
really
about that.
Kanye's mental health. One thing that I've consistently heard brought up as a reason for Kanye's behavior is his bipolar disorder.
It's not I hate being bipolar, it's awesome. It's actually, it drives more of how you really feel. It doesn't do an opposite.
Now, this could be a contributing factor, but would it really cause a person to be anti-Semitic? I looked into what psychiatrists say on the topic to try and get a better feel for why so many have used bipolar as a viable reason. As an aside, before I continue, I want to make the point that bipolar disorder can manifest differently from person to person, and there are multiple different types of bipolar that a person can be diagnosed with. We're specifically talking about Kanye and his actions or reactions only. So, moving on. MedPage Today published an article detailing Kanye's paranoia over the past couple years. While his fear of vaccines and views around Planned Parenthood are frustratingly common in some circles, his visions for a White House organizational model based on Black Panther's Wakanda aren't common or reasonable at all. As for why Kanye doesn't take medication, he has openly discussed that on David Letterman, stating that meds ramp him up. He said, quote, "When you ramp up, it expresses your personality more, and you have a heightened connection with the universe, as well as more energy and productivity. When you're in this state, you're hyper-paranoid about everything. Everything's a conspiracy. You feel the government is putting chips in your head. You feel you're being recorded. You feel all these things." Ye also said that he was under the care of a doctor and using alternative care, but medication just didn't work for him. He explained his disorder as having a sprained brain, and he didn't want to push it. Now, I have no idea how many different kinds of medication Kanye has tried, and I don't know if there's something out there that could work, but everyone has to do what's right for them, and I do appreciate that he's trying to advocate for himself. The Washington Post also spoke to experts in the field and those diagnosed with bipolar disorder to get a better understanding of what a manic episode is like. Cameron Kasky told them that with his disorder, he can go from feeling like he's in the darkest depths to the coolest kid in the world. In a manic state, he might spend more money and be more impulsive. For other people with bipolar, this may mean speaking extremely quickly, gambling, sleeping with multiple partners, and other rash decisions. Again, I'm not a psychiatrist, but it makes sense that for Kanye, this would look more extreme. Spending a few $1,000s gambling probably wouldn't matter to him, but running for president? Now that's an impulsive decision. Kanye telling people he's God or a close hi to God, that could also be a symptom of delusions, of that coolest kid in the world feeling that Kasky described. Actually distinguishing between a person actively making these decisions and a person feeling influenced by their disorder to make these decisions is no easy task. Steve Hyman, the director of the Stanley Center for Psychiatric Research, says is it me or my illness question is an entangled and difficult one to answer. Quote, often it is impossible
Especially
to find
one that
a
doesn't
neat
vilify
separation
people
between
with,
a
like,
person as
conditions.
they would had been, if not ill, and the influence of a mental illness. But what about taking things to the extreme and spewing hateful anti-Semitic comments? Metzger, who runs a lab dedicated to mental health research and education, has stated that racism itself is not a mental health disorder. And even though bipolar disorder may cause a lack of a filter, it does not create racist values in the first place. Maybe Kanye never would have said he wants to kill Jewish people if it wasn't for his disorder. That's a distinct possibility. But it seems pretty clear that he would have had to have these beliefs in the first place in order to spew them.
That's a big
Metzger isn't the only medical expert saying this.
I'm glad someone just laid that out very plainly, because that was part of the discourse that's always bugged me. Because like, yeah, there's some things when I saw like when Ye was doing the entire presidential run and was giving that speech, and then in the middle of that speech, you know, he was saying the weirdest things and then crying and then laughing, and then like I was just like, I didn't really cover it or talk about it because I don't like being an armchair athlete, but I also don't like just like sitting there and being like, oh, it looks like he's doing something because of his mental condition, right? But like the anti-Semitism or the racism or the views on slavery and black people that it was a choice, all that kind of stuff, like it's not bipolar disorder making that racism, you know, or making that racism. It could be, it might exacerbate him to speak publicly about his racist views or stuff like that. But like the racism itself is his racism.
Psychologist Bedford Palmer flat out told Gizmodo that bipolar disorder does not make you racist or anti-Semitic. Clinical psychologist Jonathan Stea said the same thing, adding, people are much more than the mental disorders they might experience.
My partner has bipolar disorder and she's never gone racist or bigoted around since I've known her. Well, yeah. Because it'd be really weird if it's like, well, if you're bipolar, you're also racist. Yes.
It all boils down to an important question. Do we hold Kanye accountable for his actions or continue making excuses for him? The thing is, whether or not medication worked for Kanye, it's his responsibility to seek help. It may be hard, but it's what he needs to do. He knows that his disorder impacted his marriage to Kim, and he knows it's deeply affected those around him, but he isn't addressing it. He has been open about what being bipolar looks like for him, and that's a fantastic first step. It's great for sparking conversation. But now, Kanye needs to actually do something about it. Maybe some people think this whole thing is for attention, but he's certainly put his money where his mouth is too. A few anti-Semitic remarks were worth over $1 billion to him, and there's
My ex-roommate said his ADHD made him beat his ex-wife and he just wanted to unalive women. I was like, nah, dude, you just need help. Yeah, no shit.
Clean up your room.
I have ADHD. I've got pretty severe ADHD. I've never once thought that.
no excusing that. We don't know Kanye's motives, but in the end, the damage is still the same. The harm he's caused does not go away just because he has a mental illness. And as for how we address this in the first place, that's another point worth making. Some news coverage has treated Kanye as a joke or dismissed his diagnosis. Then, when his mental illness is addressed, it's sometimes done in a stigmatizing manner. Calhoun, a psychiatry resident.
Yeah, ADHD makes me forget to fold laundry. Like, it manifests in weird ways sometimes. I do this thing a lot where my partner, she'll open up the fridge and then there's just like things that shouldn't be in there, like keys or a wallet or like chips or something. And she's like, why would you do this? Like, you do this all the time. And I don't have any recollection of doing that. I just like looked down, I was like, I do not, like, I don't have the visual, because I have pretty astute visual memory for some things. I can really recall like what I've seen in a room or what was happening at a certain time, but I was like, I have no memory of doing that. But I was like, yeah, I was, and then she was like, oh, okay, this is like an ADHD thing. I was like, I guess so. That's strange.
Resident from Yale believes that Kanye's comments and mental illness should be spoken about separately because one does not cause the other. We don't need to stigmatize people with bipolar disorder as racist or anti-Semitic. That's just kind of a Kanye thing. Personally, I feel that if Kanye were a famous woman instead of a man, I don't know, say Amanda Bynes or Britney Spears, he would have already been made to get help or even been placed in a conservatorship. Instead, Kanye was, and is to some extent, just treated like some.
I watched Milky's ADHD video, use that exact story. Yeah, I was trying to explain it because when I was first talking to Mildred, he was like, I don't know if you have a way of explaining it. I was like, it's kind of difficult because I think it's very different for a lot of different people. But the idea that it's like you just can't concentrate on things that bore you. I was like, no, that's just being a person. That's like everybody can't concentrate on things that bore them. This is quite different than that.
Misunderstood genius. At
yeah,
the
I saw
end
the
of the day,
Illuminati's video.
Two things can be true at the same time. Kanye needs help, and he needs to be held accountable too.
I discovered a box of cereal put in the bathroom. I have done that before. I have just put cereal boxes in the bathroom, and like it's like it's strange. If I put it into a cupboard that it shouldn't be in, like a bathroom cupboard, that's weird because that's different than like you're just being lazy or you're just being like a dude. You're not like cleaning up after yourself. It's like, you know, you're just like, oh, there's socks on the floor. Well, that's my ADHD. You cannot criticize it, or you're criticizing mental health. No, but they're radically different things.
But at the end of the day, these are just my opinions, my thoughts on things, and
I disagree. I think concentration could be a big issue. It is a huge issue. I'm saying that like the way it's worded by the mainstream media, where it's just like you're not able to listen to things that bore you. I was like, well, everyone's not able, and will have trouble paying attention or registering or focusing on information they find dull and or boring. Like if you are in a seminar and it's just like, in 1742, it was found that the storage of grain ratio by the proxy was not an adequate amount to keep the water from. And you'd be like, oh God, this is fucking the worst. This is so bad. That's really, really different than sometimes like if I'm staring at numbers on a spreadsheet or something, I have the inability to actually compute and process them, and it to such a point that it can confuse me, and I'll just stand there staring for like a very long amount of time. And it's not because I'm like, I'm bored by this, which I am, but it's also because I'm really unable to process this information. That was really good. Everyone should go to the Illuminati and go subscribe to her channel. Give her the views. It was nice to have seen a Kanye West video that was actually done by, you know, promoting a lot of black voices in their critique, because I think it should be centered around that first and foremost. I've recommended this show before. I say this as someone who is not black. So if you two are watching or listening to this and you are not black and you don't have the lived black experience, when it comes to Bill Cosby, there was a really good show that just came out. Again, it interviews predominantly a series of black entertainers, comedians, musicians, and stuff like that, and talks to them about the Cosby experience and what that was like and why it took so long for black men especially to finally start believing women for this. And it's really neat as just a project because it shows you about intersectionality, how there's so many crossing things going on at once. There's obviously the misogyny just inherent into men, which is like, you know, oh, was she asking for it? Is she lying for the fame? I don't believe her. I believe all victims, except sometimes women lie. So that woven into the other aspect of there being a very predominant part of American society that has oppressed black people for so long, and it's no different even if you are in entertainment. There's so few roles in entertainment, and he was such a pioneer and such a visionary both for comedy as well as black people, not only founding these shows that suddenly had black families on the front of magazines, and the idea of what is like a wholesome black family suddenly can be enjoyed and suddenly it's a mainstream idea. That like all of that was so important. All of that was so integral to growing up in America as like black people, that they had such a difficult time with Cosby, and then it just kept on ramping up, and then it was like there's 2 accusers, there's 5 accusers, there's 10 accusers, there's 20 accusers, there's 40 accusers, there's 50 accusers, and then at a certain point, even like it went as far as like even Whoopi Goldberg, who was one of the last holdouts because they were such good friends and had worked in similar fields for such a long time. Eventually, it's like, yeah, the writing was on the wall of that one. But I would highly recommend it. It was a super interesting. It was a super interesting documentary for someone who obviously didn't have that as a lived experience, you know?
Do you enjoy the Serfs but prefer not to have to use your eyeballs? Many are saying this. Well, we've got the solution for you. It's the Serf Times in podcast form, available on most major podcasting networks now. If you enjoy it, please consider leaving a good review and feedback because it really helps the show out, apparently, and it's free, just like the podcast.
To our gods, Xander Corvus and Peyton L. Juste, we shall spend many a generations building mighty cathedrals in your honor. To our monarch, Tom Spiker, we are but your oafish jesters, here to offer you a laugh at any opportunity. To our brave knights of the Round Table, Rachel K., Izzy Solidarity, Victoria Bell, Sebastian Demmel, Mark Harmon, Benji Arney, Scary Earth Human, Tony, DM Rivera, Resident Scarecrow, Sir Nickus, Cheryl Alvarez, Ruby Kelly, Brandon, Words Greenwood, Everything Important, Hegbert Celine, Matthew Scarborough, Stellar Vision, Ariane McCarthy, Doug Cady, Daniel Sutton, Jenna Tao, Dark Puppy, Quiet One 85, Anna Loves Riley, Omni, Riley and Anna, Poodlehawk, Multimondi, Trevbot EXE, Brian Ephraim, Anthropophojack, Catherine, Ramon Acosta, Incosin, Ralph Parler, Violent Orchard, Political Puppy, La Media Panza, Todd Buckingham, and Todd La Jeunesse. We salute our valiant heroes off to fight injustice everywhere.